So hi, I'm Downwind. I'm a student at Union County College, and I'm giving an interview to Greg Morgan, right here. And Greg's going to tell us a little bit about himself and his profession.
My name is Greg Morgan, like Val just said. I'm the Director of Operations at the Rackets Club in Short Hills. I'm responsible for paddle tennis, regular tennis, and operations at the pool. So I'm responsible for about 15 or 20 employees, a little more in the summertime. I've been here for 5 years now. Started out as just a tennis pro, then picked up paddle in my second year, and then recently was promoted to Director of Operations.
Oh, it's very impressive, Mr. Morgan. What's your highest level of education?
I have a bachelor's degree in psychology.
You have a bachelor's degree in psychology, very nice. And you graduated from
Rutgers.
From Rutgers University, New Brunswick?
New Brunswick.
Wow, that's pretty local. I used to live there. Around like Piscataway, the area.
So did I.
So pretty cool. Oh, you lived in, you did live in Piscataway. Sorry, we definitely talked about that. So, the next question, what's your professional or employment status? And you're the Director of Operations. Can you elaborate more on being the Director of Operations?
Sure. So my job entails the successful running of basically the entire club except for restaurant operations. So there's myself as the Director of Operations. We have another guy who is the Director of Food and Beverage. So he handles anything that's in the restaurant, anything that's not involving the restaurant, which is maintenance, tennis staff, paddle staff, pool staff, office staff, board and member relations and new memberships. That's all my job. So my job basically is to make sure our current membership is happy, we're holding on and retaining members, and that we're growing our membership base, in line with what clubs around us are also doing.
So, from the Director of Operations, you're managing a country club, and a country club, the legs and the heart and the meat and potatoes of the country club are its members. And communication is very important. Now, as a technical writing student at Union County College, I wanted to ask you, how important is technical writing in your profession? How important is it to write concise, formal letters, emails, sometimes you text messages, you call your clients. How important is having the skill of writing in your profession?
It's extremely important. So on a given day, I could be sending, like you just said, a text message. Before we sat down, I got a text message from the captain of one of the paddle teams, so I'm communicating with her like that. I'm emailing vendors. We just put an order in for some equipment.
Oh, right, vendors.
I'm emailing with the board of the club, reservations, all kinds of things. So in any communication that goes out, whether it's a club-wide communication or a personal communication between me and a member, it has to be as professional as possible. I don't use any slang terms. I always sign all my emails. I write as appropriately as possible. And try to be thorough while being short at the same time. I'm not trying to take time away from them. My job is to run the club, their job is to enjoy the club. If they're a board member, they also probably have a full-time job, so I'm not trying to take up their day by getting their help. I'm trying to explain my situation, explain my reasoning for doing something in as concise and thorough way as possible. So a good amount of thought goes into all the emails, and I think over time it's become a little bit easier to do it. It's an everyday occurrence, but it's certainly important.
Yeah, after 5 years, I start to get the run of the mill of things. I know that the director of managers, and even from your job before this, you've had to interview, fire, and hire a lot of people. And I'm sure in your network, you have many people that associate, the same business as you. Like, other tennis pros, other director managers of other clubs. What type of people are successful in this job, and what type of people are not that you have seen personally?
It's a good question. So, like you mentioned earlier, the heart and soul of the club are the members. So you have to be willing to serve the members every second that you're at work. Now, that doesn't mean that you're doing every single thing that they ever ask you to do, but you have to, with any decision you make is going to be made with the members' perspective. How does this affect the membership? So you need to be able to take charge of a situation, but you have to be a huge team player. If you come in here with a big ego, you probably won't survive very long. It'd be very difficult for you to try to overtake what the members would like to do, even though you might think it's a better idea. At the end of the day, it's not your club, it's their club, right? So you have to be a team player, you have to be very social. A lot of the job is social, where the tennis social, the dinner events that they have here, you have to be willing to entertain people. And a lot of the job is trying to get people to join the club. So you're an ambassador for what the club represents. So when someone comes in and wants to get a tour, you have to construe what the membership is like, through you. So I have to explain to them how everybody acts, what the kids are allowed to do here. It's a family club, it's not a family club, and sell it to them in a way that makes them want to join, even though I'm not a member. I'm just a representative of those members. So,
right.
Yeah, it's an interesting job. You have to have a ton of patience. There's some long days, there's some conversations you might not like, there's some members who can be more difficult to deal with than others, but at the end of the day, they're all equally as important, and you have to give them all the same, time and thought. So it's a lot of fun. It's definitely an interesting job.
Yeah, a lot of flexibility, builds your character. So what type of people are not, do you think?
What type of people are not successful? Yeah, so people with egos are the biggest one. So if you come in thinking that you know the best way to do everything, it's really a tough way. You just have to deal with. So for example, the board at this club has 11 members. So once a month we have to sit down. It's myself, the food and beverage director, and the 11 board members, and everybody has their own opinion on things. All these board members have jobs. They're lawyers, they're doctors, they're business people. They all think they know how to run the club. And sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong, but we have to do what we can to make sure that they're being heard, make sure they feel like they're being heard, take their advice, and make it as a management decision on our own to continue moving the club in the right direction. So if I was to go to this meeting and not be willing to listen to other people's opinions and not be willing to discuss options for a decision and just say, oh, this is how we're going to do it, very quickly you'd find yourself, packing up your office and going out the door, because it's just, there's too many cooks in the kitchen for you to try to lead them. You have to be part of the conversation.
Right.
And a lot of times you're the voice of reason, but you have to allow it to kind of develop and get there. You can't just run for the finish line right away.
That is gold wisdom. I'm telling you. Concerning your career, what keeps you up at night? What's your biggest worry these days?
So the biggest worry is always just membership stuff. So kind of at any given time, members are allowed to leave the club, and that's what we don't want. So we're always fighting to keep our membership here, to give them reasons to come use the club. We're in a part of the country where, within a 10-mile radius from where we're sitting right now, there's probably 10 or 15 other clubs who are very similar to what we do. So we have to differentiate ourselves and explain why we're the place that they should come and bring their families and eat dinner and play tennis and paddle, bring their friends, convince their friends to join. So it's kind of a constant battle with all the area clubs to do that. So we just recently went through a large renovation. We got new tennis courts, we got new lights in the paddle courts, we got a new restaurant downstairs. And the thought behind that was we need to do more to keep new members here and bring new members in. All the clubs around us have, in the last couple of years started to do that. So that was certainly a struggle for us to get through. And I think now we're starting to see the new memberships come in, which is good, but it's a very tough time for the club industry. So with just all the competition that's out there.
Right, there's a lot of competition. I myself was not really aware of this club, was aware of other clubs, just through word of mouth.
Sure.
I can definitely see what you're fighting through.
Absolutely.
This wasn't on the question that I handed you earlier, but I'm actually writing resumes, and our professor's having us practice resumes. So I realized that you obviously got the job, and you did very well in your interview. I wanted to know what were some key things that you put on your written resume when you got this job?
So what I actually look for, and when I read a resume and when I wrote my own, it's the same idea.
Right.
Is I think people want to see a progression of responsibility, right? So they want to see that I started as a tennis pro at a local club. I did a lot of the grunt work. I was a court maintenance guy. I was a permit checker. I strung tennis rackets. I did all the stuff that an entry-level guy does. And then as I moved up, I went to a different club. I was the associate head tennis pro. So now I was in charge of junior tennis team, ladies tennis team, pro shop sales. And then in my next job, I was the director of junior tennis. So I had the full-on junior tennis. I did a little bit of paddle. So each job I went to, I increased my responsibility. And then when I worked at my last job before here, I was in charge of a whole tennis operation that was in multiple states at one time. We hired hundreds of coaches in the summer. So I was able to use all the experience I gained at my smaller jobs to put into action. It's a lot like when you think of like a football coach. They start as a linebacker coach, then they're a defensive coordinator, and and then they maybe get to become either a head coach or an associate head coach, and now they're running the whole program. So that's what they want to see. You know, if I showed them a resume that I was a tennis pro here, and I was just jumping horizontally and just being a tennis pro in different areas, you're not going to be differentiated from someone when you're trying to get a job or you're running the show.
Right.
You have to show them that you've worked your way up and now you're ready to take that on. So that was the biggest thing.
What's really great about that, I've talked to some of your employees, and I think what's really cool, that builds your character, that you were able to start with grunt work and progress, because you understand the in and outs of the operations of each level. You understand the mindset of each employee, from the guy from the maintenance to the president, all the way at the top of the club. You know, the difference between the salary, somebody making $15,000 a year and someone making $250,000 a year, that you understand the characteristics of both of these guys, so that, you know, you can bring out the best in both of them. And, you know, that sounds very good. What is your reward system, not including your salary? What is the satisfaction that comes with this job? You know, like what makes you really happy about this job?
So for me, it's seeing people use the club. So the best example I have right now is our paddle program. So when I started here, paddle was almost non-existent. We had one women's team, we had no men's teams, we had a very small junior program. And in the last few years, it's now grown to the point where we need to add paddle courts to take on all the people who want to play. We have multiple men's teams, multiple women's teams. We have a junior team. We have junior clinics that are, you know, through the roof with kids. We can't hold them in the course that we have. So I think for me to see that the work I've put in and people appreciate it and are using it more is the best reward. You know, I mean, it means that's my approval from them that I'm doing a good job.
So that, you know, it makes you really happy.
Absolutely.
It makes you feel that you've done something great.
It does, and it gives you confidence to keep kind of going on that course. And you know, now I want to push to get more paddle courts. We have to spend that money, but I'm confident that if we spend the money, we're going to be able to fill it because we have all these people who want to play. You know, and it's a good problem to have, but it's hard to go after these things if you don't have some kind of a reason behind it. You know, if I just said, oh, we need to add 2 tennis courts, even though we're not filling the 4 that we already have, that's a hard sell. And then at the end of the day, if we do build them, I got to fill those courts somehow. So I'm confident, based on the results we've had with paddle, that we would certainly have no problem filling those courts.
All right, well done. Do you have any heroes that you look up to that have an inspirational attribution to your career?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a guy in New York who runs a restaurant chain. His name's Danny Meyer. He wrote a book. A bunch of cookbooks, a bunch of other stuff. He wrote a book about his management style, he's in the hospitality industry. He's always been in the industry. But what he said is he treats his staff like his customers, meaning his staff actually come first. He takes care of the staff, and then he worries about his customer base, because he realizes that without the staff being there to put out the product that he wants and the show that he wants to have his customers receive, it doesn't matter. It's not going to be good enough for what the customers are. The customers aren't going to be there anymore. It's going to fall apart. So, and that's how I've always tried to run things, make sure that we have a staff who appreciates what I do, feels like they're rewarded properly, and enjoys what they're doing, and that they have the support from me that they need. And it gives them the confidence to go out and do the job that I need them to do. I can be confident that our members are getting the right experience, and it allows me to go out and work on member relationships and other things, while at the same time, you know, trying to build up the experience of our employees and push them to, you know, to go apply for other jobs at other places once they're ready to go. But Danny Meyer is where I kind of saw that really in writing for the first time, and it really resonated with me.
Wow. 1 + 1. Do you ever write emails, memos, or letters when you were upset? I know, like, you know, you work long hours. Sometimes you can get really, really early. You leave really late. Not everything goes the way it should. Sometimes members cancel. It creates a lot of emotional stress. And, you know, unfortunately, the day still revolves and the club must go on. So when you're feeling this type of stress, how do you handle communicating with the members?
So when I first started
The worst days.
the job, I would answer with, you know, especially with having the technology we have these days, I get an email, could be teaching a lesson, get the email, and I would respond right away. I had a couple instances where I'd go back and I'd read what I sent, and I would say, you know what, I should have said this or I should have said that. And I made a rule for myself that if I had an email that was anything off the beaten path as far as the tone of the email or what they were asking me, I would give it 24 hours, and then the next day I would you know, write out the email. And I found it just makes for a much more pleasant experience for everybody, but it also gets the resolution a little bit quicker. It's a thought out email. I took a whole day to think about it. I know exactly what I want. I know where they're coming from, and it allows us to just, to resolve it as quick as we can. Whereas if you shoot off the email right away and you are really emotional, you may say something that you're going to regret later, and then you're going to have to spend time backtracking that statement, which is just a waste of everybody's time. It doesn't even need to be said. And that's one of the things with this job that can be tough, is you sometimes just need to, you need to just kind of be the punching bag every now and then and let somebody vent, and that's all it is. They're venting. You kind of leave that part out. You respond to what the actual issue is, and you get resolution as quickly as you can.
Right, and I'm sure the members respect that they can vent to you.
Absolutely.
And doing that so would bolster your relations with them. I know this is a growing business, and I know there's always room for improvement. So what's the most important achievement you hope to accomplish in your current role right now?
What I would like to accomplish is I would like to have the club have a waiting list for membership. So we're just under our capacity for membership now. If we can gain the waiting list, it means we've created a real drive for people to want to be a part of the club. So much so that they're willing to wait to get their chance to do it. And I think that's always a sign of what a successful club is that you always have a pipeline of people who are willing to join, who want to join. And they're willing to say, what, I'll wait 12 months because I really want to be a part of this. So, and that goes both ways. It goes with the members making it that way so that they're using the club and they're bringing people to see it, and they're selling it to people in a way that makes them want to be here. And I have to make sure that services and products we provide are up to a standard that would make people want to do that. With all the competition in the area, it's certainly not an easy thing to do, but that's what keeps the club going. And if we have a wait list, that's the best advertising we could ever have. Is that sorry, we have a list of 15 families who are waiting to join. That's where we want to be.
No, that definitely makes a lot of sense. A big wait list would definitely bring the notoriety of this club up. If I was working for you, let's say if I was an assistant pro or one of the many people that you hire, what can I do to make you more successful today, this week, this month?
So I think what I always like to see out of any employee that we have is just that they're being thoughtful, and they're using the same member-first perspective that I try to preach to people. So when they're having a conversation, the employee should be taking in the information and then answering questions based on the member's perspective. Not necessarily your own perspective, but you're now part of the club. You're a part of the member experience.
Right,
so
right.
You need to handle your conversations, your interactions with people in a way that promotes the club. Any employee is an extension of myself, and all of us are an extension of the club itself. So that's the best thing I like to see. That's how we move the club forward. That's how we move employees forward. That's what it's all about.
We've been talking through email, and what's the one thing differently in my writing that I can further use to improve my credibility? Like another thing you added, I should add to my emails, maybe like a signature at the bottom, and an address. That would definitely make it a lot more, formal. Some of the emails I send you are almost like a text, like either.
Right. Exactly.
I know that that's not very acceptable.
So yes, that's probably the best point there. So I try to make all my emails as official as possible, meaning I treat them very differently from text messages. And I think in a text message, it's okay to say, see you later, or I'll be there in 10 minutes, or whatever it is. I think an email needs a little bit more explanation, and I think it's always good to have some kind of a sign-off, whether it's kind regards, best regards, thank you. It just, again, it keeps it a little bit formal on the email, and I think that's what it is. People just want to know, that they can email me, and they know they're going to get a professional response every single time. I'm never short with people. I make sure there's no typos. I don't even put the thing. A lot of people in their emails have an apology for typos, if there are any, which to me means that they're not taking the time to read their email.
Right.
So I don't put that little line in there and make sure there's no typos. And I think that's the best thing you can do is just keep it as professional as you can.
You're managing the paddle program. You got promoted to manager, so you're managing the tennis program, the paddle program, and this. You have a life at home, obviously. You have your own passions. You go in depth with the styles and techniques you use for management. Do you keep an agenda? Is it a mobile calendar?
Sure. So I keep basically a running to-do list. Now some things never come off that to-do list. Like there's a weekly the weekly membership email that goes out, so that's always on the top of the list and never goes anywhere, just so I don't forget it. But generally, that's what it is. I like to do a lot of things face to face. I like to have a lot of meetings with staff. I like to meet with the board as often as I can, and I'll adjust my to-do list from that point. But I think relationship building is the best thing I can do for the club, but also for myself. A lot of the nice thing about these clubs is you have people from all different professions, and you can network every single day of the week. And there's not a lot of professions where you can do that, because in most places you work in a certain industry, and the people you deal with are also in the same industry. We're here, I'm dealing with people who are doctors, who are lawyers, who are sports professionals, or all kinds of different stuff. So you never know where it's going to lead you to, but it's also just extremely interesting. So I like a lot of face-to-face time, and I think at the end of the day, I just want to make sure, I try to make myself as organized as I can, and then spread that through to everybody else. That way, the entire staff is sort of on the same page, and I try to preach a little bit of my management style to anybody else who's managing, so that way we're all cohesive. I don't think it works well when you have a manager and then someone underneath the manager who has a completely different management style.
Right.
There's a lot of clashing going on.
So how's this do? This is like an app? Or?
So no, it's just on a notebook.
Yeah.
It's on a notebook, and the way I do it is I organize it into things that are urgent, things that are don't have to get done today, basically, and things that are just reoccurring, right? So the urgent stuff always gets done. There's stuff that at the end of the day you look at it and you're like, all right, this doesn't actually need to get done today, so it gets pushed to the next day's list. And the reoccurring stuff just stays there all the time. And then as you go through it, you cross them off and you update them as you have to. Because there could be a thing where, all of a sudden the pipe breaks on the tennis court, but I had nothing going on my list for tennis for that day. Now we've got to reprioritize. That has to get done.
Right, there must be an urgent.
And you just have to keep readjusting.
Right, yeah. That's also how I keep my notebook. So you're a treasure trove of experience right now. You've worked at many different companies. You've done every single position of the job. If I were to ask your former boss to describe you, what would they say? If I were to ask your former bosses to describe you as if, you're working at First Play, or you started the grunt work, I heard you were teaching tennis, hourly at center court, what would they say about you?
So I think they would say I'm a hard worker,
Right.
I'm a good listener, which is the biggest one. There's no way to grow the staff and grow your product if you're not listening to what people want, which is both ways, from the membership and from your own staff. So I think of that, and I think they would say I'm willing to do what it takes to get the job done, which in this industry again is extremely important. There's weeks where I come in and I work a little bit every single day, but if that gets us closer to our goal, like getting a waiting list and getting people on the paddle courts and in the pool, or making the right hire for the pool program, whatever it might be, I'm responsible for it at the end of the day. So I have to be willing to put in that time. I can't just be a guy who shows up for the 9 to 5 and clocks out at the end of the day and says, "Oh,
right,
that's it for the next day."
Right.
So I think that's the biggest thing. But I think being a good listener is actually the most important one, because those are where you're going to figure out how your decisions need to make progress. And I think without that, it's very difficult to be successful.
Right. A key lesson that I've learned is that if you want to be successful in businesses like this, you have to learn how to work for free. Off the clock, and there are many intangible rewards that come with that, either through member recognition or life experience and skills like that. And I definitely know what you mean when you say even though your job is 9 to 5, the job still continues.
Right. Off
the court and on the court. I'm sure if you saw a member on your off days and Saturdays,
right,
the job continues and it resurrects right there. You go back to your professional life. Now I noticed your careers. Sorry. So dating back to sort of the interview process, I noticed that you sent a lot of instructions and tips for people that, sometimes I know back in First Play you had a really huge tennis staff, maybe like 40 people and 50 people, and you can't meet each person individually. So what you do is you wrote out instructions on how each lesson should be done, what time they should get there. You wrote out this big pamphlet, sometimes you put in a little template of what to expect out of each person so they can read, sort of have a fundamental of how you want your program run, how it should be ran. How much thought did you put into that written instruction?
So a lot. I mean, that's kind of the most important piece of the puzzle from my viewpoint. In a situation like that where I may not see everybody face to face on a regular basis, they need to be reminded what the expectation is, you know, but they're the ones delivering that expectation. I'm not physically there to ensure it all the time, so I think that's where there is a certain level of trust, and that's why I do always put the staff first, because I want them to feel like they're empowered to go out and deliver the program. You know, because I can't be there to do it, but they have to, you know, they do know that there is an expectation. So it has to be clear, it has to be thorough, and you have to kind of cover every situation you could ever come up with. You know, what if the parent's late? What if the kid does this? You know, how do you put them in timeout? Whatever it might be, because they're the ones who have to make the decisions during the class. You know, I'm not going to be there to help them through it. It's all going to be on them. So certainly that manual becomes the Bible for the program essentially.
Right. I'm sure you guys run them through like on-the-job training and sort of orientation of how to handle these situations. Mm-hmm. On top of that, when you guys get in big groups, what were the English classes that you took that has helped you further your career, either in writing or communication, that's really formalized your writing?
So I took, when I was at Rutgers, I took a class that was called Writing for Medical Professionals. So before I got into the club industry, I had aspirations to go to medical school, and I ended up getting one of these jobs, and I just kind of stuck with it. But I think the medical writing class was interesting because it made us really kind of get to the point of what we're writing quickly, but as thoroughly as possible. So, you know, if we had a big presentation I had to give, it allowed me to just kind of cut out some of the meat that I didn't really need on there, and explain my position, which dealing with board members here, especially guys who are maybe high-powered attorneys or, you know, very wealthy guys on Wall Street, you know, they like to do things quickly. They don't like to sit and listen to a big speech about why I might want to do something. They want to know, you know, what I'm going to do and why I'm going to do it, and why this is, you know, the right decision. And that's kind of it. So I think that medical writing class really made that point clear to me that I need to be concise and thorough. You know, but I just you gotta kind of get to the point. So that class always stuck with me.
It's great that you say that because you know, I'm a great professor. You know, I'm in technical writing right now, and you know, we learn memos, and it's right to the point. You know, you take all the important information and you give it to them because no one wants to sit there and read 3 pages on what should be done. You know, they want like 3, 4, 5 instructions, and the sweeter it is, the better. And it's very interesting just how important like technical writing is in this field. So we got about 2 more questions left. I know you're a very busy man, and thank you a lot, by the way, for taking time out of your weekend for this.
Sure.
You're giving an interview, and well, before the interview, you get a resume. You know, you get the resume. This guy has a pretty solid resume. This is a case scenario. You know, he's had some experience, but in his paper, there's plenty of sentence fragments. You know, the format for the applicant's using for the resume may be wrong. Maybe he's not using a resume template. What are your first thoughts when you see this? Do you overlook it, considering that you know you're reviewing through a bunch of resumes? It's not like you're a dire need of an employee. There's only 2 guys there applying for the job.
Right. So there's 2 pieces to that. I always want to take into account whatever experience the person has. So if they have the experience that I'm looking for, I'll certainly take note of any of those mistakes, and I will bring it to their attention during that interview process. So if they made a bunch of grammar mistakes or spelling mistakes, you know, if they don't have the experience to meet it, then that resume is overlooked. We discard that one. If they have experience that we want, we'll bring them in, and I'll make sure that we, you know, make note of them. Hey, you know, there's some detail that wasn't, you know, attended to on your resume. You know, can you explain that a little bit? Because certainly, if they're not going in thoroughly on their own resume, it doesn't speak well to what's going to happen when they're in charge of something at the club. So, yeah, especially with the amount of emails and communications that they would be responsible for, it's certainly a big deal. So, and then we'll see if they have a good explanation. You know, we'll listen to it. More often than not, it's just that they didn't see it, they didn't notice it, and that's always a problem. If they didn't notice it, it means they weren't looking for it, which either means that they, you know, didn't believe they could have made those mistakes, or they just never bothered to check, which both of those things are certainly a big issue.
No, right. All right, last question here. If you had to narrow down 3 important attributes that people in your field require, what would they be?
So I think you need to be patient. That's definitely number one. I think you need to be assertive, and I think you need to be a team player or a good listener, however you want to put that. I think you need to be able to take everybody's opinion into account, but at the end of the day, it's going to be your decision, whether it's being the tennis pro or the paddle pro or the swim director, whatever it is, you're responsible for the program at the end of the day. If there's a problem, all eyes are on you. So while it's important to take in what everybody's saying, you have to use those opinions to the best of your ability to make the right decision for the club. I think because there's so many moving parts, there's the restaurant, there's the pool, there's paddle, there's tennis, there's maintenance crew, there's board members, there's all kinds of stuff. You have to be able to work with multitude of people. And if you're not willing to do that, you just won't be successful. So I think for sure those are the 3 most important things.
All right, thank you, Mr. Morgan. Thank you for taking your time out
Absolutely.
on your weekend.
Thank you.
This has been a pleasure.
You got it.
And, you have a great day.
You too.
I'm going to edit that last part out. Maybe like